The Omega was already beyond the kingdom gates when the first cub followed her. Nobody noticed. Not the guards standing atop the stone walls. Not the nobles celebrating inside the great hall. Not even the Alpha King sitting on his throne. The kingdom believed a problem had been solved. An accused traitor had been cast out. Justice had been served. At least that was the story everyone had accepted. Lyra Moonshade never looked back as she crossed the border road. The iron gates closed behind her with a sound that echoed through the valley like the final slam of a coffin lid. Everything she had ever known was behind those walls. Her home. Her friends. Her future. What she didn't know was that a pair of tiny footsteps had begun following her. Then another. And another. 3 young alpha cubs slipped away from the kingdom one after another. No guards stopped them. No alarms sounded. The future heirs of 3 powerful bloodlines simply disappeared into the wilderness behind an exiled Omega. Hours later, darkness swallowed the mountains. A terrified guard burst into the royal hall. 1 cub was missing. Then another. Then another. The celebration died instantly. Because those weren't ordinary children. They were the future of the kingdom itself. Search parties flooded the forests. Warriors rode through the night. The Alpha King personally joined the hunt. But Lyra had vanished. And the deeper they searched, the more impossible the truth became. The cubs had not been taken. They had chosen to leave. And they had chosen her. 3 days earlier. The kingdom of Blackthorn had never been quieter. Not because peace existed. Because fear did. Thousands of wolves stood in the central square staring toward the royal platform. A trial was underway. And everyone already knew the verdict. Lyra stood alone in chains. Rain soaked her silver hair. Cold wind whipped against her torn clothing. She looked less like a criminal and more like a sacrifice. Yet nobody stepped forward. Nobody defended her. Not even the man who should have known better. Alpha King Exile Blackthorn sat above everyone on the throne platform. His expression was unreadable. Cold. Controlled. Distant. The same eyes that once looked at Lyra with gratitude now avoided hers entirely. That hurt more than the chains. Elder Varek slowly stepped forward. The oldest council member carried a scroll. His voice echoed across the square. Lyra Moonshade has been found guilty of conspiring with rogue wolves against the kingdom. Gasps spread through the crowd. Lyra closed her eyes. The accusation was a lie. Every word of it. She had spent years helping wounded pack members. Years serving others. Years protecting people who would not even meet her gaze today. And now those same people watched her destruction. Varek continued. Evidence confirms she transmitted information to enemy territories. The crowd began whispering. Lyra's hands trembled. 'Cause there was no evidence. Only forged reports. False witnesses. And carefully planted lies. Someone had planned this. Someone powerful. Her eyes drifted toward Luna Celine. The beautiful future Luna stood beside the throne. Perfect posture. Perfect smile. Perfect innocence. But Lyra noticed the satisfaction hidden behind her eyes. And suddenly she understood. Celine wanted her gone. Forever. A painful realization settled inside her chest. This had never been about treason. It had always been about removing a threat. Not a political threat. Personal one. Years ago Exile had trusted Lyra more than anyone. She had saved his life during a border ambush. A secret very few people knew. Since then Celine had viewed Lyra as competition. Now she had finally found a way to destroy her. Varek raised his voice. The punishment for treason is death. The crowd erupted. Some shouted. Some cried. Some cheered. Lyra felt the world freeze. So this was how it ended. Not as a hero. Not as a loyal pack member. But as a traitor. Criminal. Lie. For the first time her eyes met Exile's. She searched desperately for something. Anything. Concern. Recognition. Instead she found silence. The Alpha King remained motionless. And that silence shattered her more completely than any blade ever could. Commander Riker suddenly stepped forward. "She is innocent." The crowd gasped. Several council members stood immediately. Riker's voice thundered across the square. "I investigated the reports myself. The evidence is incomplete." Verek's eyes narrowed. "You challenge the council. I challenge a lie." Tension exploded across the platform. For a brief moment hope returned to Lyra's heart. Maybe someone would finally listen. Maybe the truth would matter. Then Celine spoke. Toughly, firmly, dangerously. "Commander Riker's loyalty appears compromised." The crowd instantly turned. Whispers spread. Doubt spread faster. Verek seized the opportunity. "The council has reached a final decision." Riker tried again. But guards blocked his path. The verdict was already decided. The trial had never been real. It had merely been theater. A performance designed to justify what powerful people wanted. Verek unrolled the final decree. "The death sentence shall be reduced." Confusion spread. Even Lyra looked up. Verek smiled. "Not kindly, cruelly. Lyra Moonshade is hereby stripped of pack status and permanently exiled from Blackthorn Kingdom." A collective gasp echoed across the square. Exile. For a werewolf, exile could be worse than death. No pack, no territory, no protection, no home. Alone forever. Kale finally stood. The entire square fell silent. For one impossible moment Lyra thought he might stop this. Thought he might reveal the truth. Thought he might remember who she was. Instead he spoke only 6 words. "The council's decision will stand." Everything inside her broke. Not because she lost her home. 'Cause she lost faith. Faith in justice. Faith in loyalty. Faith in him. The chains were removed. The gates were opened. And just like that she ceased to belong. Nobody stopped her as she walked away. Nobody apologized. Nobody explained. The crowd parted around her like she carried a disease. Only one person moved. Commander Riker. Their eyes met briefly. His expression held regret. And a warning. As if he knew something far worse was coming. But before he could speak, guards forced him back. Lyra continued walking. Toward the kingdom gates. Toward uncertainty. Toward darkness. High above the square, hidden behind a stone balcony, 3 young cubs watched everything. Rowan, Darius, and Elias. Tears filled their eyes. Because unlike the adults around them, they knew who Lyra really was. Years earlier she had bandaged their wounds. Protected them. Comforted them during nightmares. She had treated them like family when nobody else had time. And now she was leaving. Alone. As Lyra disappeared beyond the gates, the 3 cubs quietly made a decision. A decision that would change the kingdom forever. One by one, they slipped away. And followed her. The kingdom disappeared behind Lyra long before sunset. Its towers slowly faded into the distance until they became nothing more than shadows against the mountains. She should have felt relief. Instead she felt empty. Every step carried her farther from the only home she had ever known. The road ahead wound through forests, cliffs, and forgotten wilderness where rogue wolves hunted anything weak enough to catch. For an Omega traveling alone, survival itself was uncertain. Yet Lyra kept walking. Because there was nowhere left to return. The sky burned orange as evening approached. Her legs ached. Her throat was dry. And for the first time since exile, she allowed herself to stop. A small stream flowed through a clearing surrounded by ancient pine trees. Lyra knelt beside the water and splashed her face. Cold droplets slid down her skin. For a moment she closed her eyes. Silence. Then she heard it. A branch snapped. Her body instantly tensed. Years of survival instincts awakened. Slowly she turned. Nothing. Only trees. Only shadows. Only darkness gathering between trunks. She almost dismissed it. Then another sound came. Tiny footsteps. Not one pair. Several. Lyra frowned. She rose carefully and stepped deeper into the trees. The sound stopped. She moved again. They followed. Her heartbeat quickened. Someone was there. Someone hiding. Suddenly she spun around. Come out. Silence. Now. A few seconds passed. Then a small figure emerged from behind a tree. Lyra froze. Rowan. The young alpha cub stepped forward nervously. The heir of the northern alpha clan looked exhausted. Leaves clung to his clothes. Mud covered his boots. But he was undeniably there. Lyra stared in disbelief. What are you doing here? Rowan lowered his head. I followed you. No. Her voice hardened immediately. No, you didn't. I did. You need to go back. I'm not going back. Before Lyra could answer, another small figure emerged. Then another. Darius. Elias. All three cubs stood together. Lyra felt her heart nearly stop. By the moon goddess. For several seconds she simply stared. The realization hit like lightning. The heirs were missing. The kingdom didn't know yet, but they would soon. And when they did, chaos would erupt. What were you thinking? She demanded. Darius crossed his arms. We're staying. No. Yes. No. Yes. Even now, Darius was stubborn. Exactly as she remembered. Lyra looked toward Elias. The youngest. Quietest. Surely he would listen. Instead he walked forward and wrapped both arms around her waist. We didn't want you to be alone. The words struck harder than any blade. For a second Lyra couldn't breathe. Nobody had cared whether she was alone. Nobody except these children. Pain and affection collided inside her chest. She gently knelt beside him. Elias. His eyes were already watering. You always took care of us. The forest suddenly felt very quiet. Too quiet. Because deep down Lyra knew something terrifying. These children trusted her more than they trusted their own kingdom. That wasn't normal. That wasn't safe. And that wasn't a problem she could ignore. You have to go back. No. Darius. No. Rowan. No. Elias. The youngest shook his head immediately. Lyra nearly laughed despite everything. 3 future alphas. 3 impossible children. And all 3 had somehow decided she was worth following into exile. Night began falling. The situation was rapidly becoming dangerous. She needed them home. Immediately. But before she could decide how to handle them, a distant howl echoed through the mountains. Everyone froze. Another howl answered. Then another. Lyra's blood turned cold. Rogue wolves. Too many. Too close. The cubs heard it too. Fear instantly appeared on their faces. Lyra stood. Her protective instincts activated without hesitation. Behind me. The boys obeyed immediately. That alone said more than words ever could. 3 heirs raised among warriors had chosen her as their shield. The howls grew louder. Closer. Shapes began moving between trees. Glowing eyes. 1 pair. Then 5. Then 10. The rogues had found them. A large wolf stepped from the darkness. Guard. Massive. Hungry. The creature's gaze locked onto the cubs. Easy prey. Valuable prey. The wolf lunged. Before anyone could react, Lyra moved. She grabbed a fallen branch and swung with every ounce of strength she possessed. The wood cracked against the wolf's skull. The animal stumbled sideways. Another wolf charged. Then another. Lyra placed herself directly between the predators and the children. She wasn't the strongest. She wasn't an alpha. She wasn't even fully healed from exile. But she stood anyway. Because protecting others was who she was. Even after everything. The fight lasted only minutes. Yet it felt endless. Lyra suffered cuts across her arms. Her shoulder burned. Blood stained her clothing. But eventually the rogues retreated. Driven away by her relentless resistance. The forest became silent once more. Heavy breathing filled the clearing. Darius stared at her. Rowan stared at her. Elias looked ready to cry. None of them had ever seen an Omega fight like that. Not for herself. For them. Lyra slowly sank against a tree. Exhaustion crashed into her all at once. The adrenaline faded. Pain rushed in. Immediately the boys surrounded her. Concern filled their faces. And something else. Understanding. For the first time they truly saw what the kingdom refused to see. Strength wasn't always measured by power. Sometimes it was measured by sacrifice. Hours later, while the boys slept around a small fire, Lyra remained awake. Watching. Thinking. Worrying. Because somewhere far behind them, the kingdom would eventually realize the truth. The heirs were gone. And when that happened, every warrior in Blackthorn would come searching. Her eyes drifted toward the sleeping cubs. Why had they followed her? The answer felt bigger than loyalty. Bigger than affection. There was something else. Something hidden. Something she couldn't yet understand. Far away, beneath the kingdom's towering walls, alarm bells suddenly exploded through the night. Guards raced across courtyards. Servants searched hallways. Panic spread like wildfire. The first cub was missing. Then the second. Then the third. Within minutes, the entire kingdom was awake. Inside the throne room, Alpha King Kale stood frozen as reports arrived one after another. 3 heirs. Vanished. No witnesses. No explanation. Only a single discovery. Tiny footprints leading toward the western gate. The same gate Lyra had crossed hours earlier. A terrible realization settled over the room. Silence followed. Then Kale spoke. For the first time since the trial, genuine fear entered his voice. Find them. Warriors immediately rushed out. Search parties formed. Wolves were deployed. Scouts scattered across the kingdom. The greatest search operation in Blackthorn history had begun. But none of them knew the truth. The heirs had not been kidnapped. They had not been stolen. They had chosen to leave. And deep within the forest, Lyra unknowingly held the future of the entire kingdom in her care. As dawn approached, one of Kale's elite trackers discovered something impossible. A trail of blood, signs of rogue wolves, and evidence that someone had protected the cubs. Not captured them. Protected them. The tracker stared at the marks in disbelief. Then he whispered the name nobody expected. Lyra. And suddenly the hunt became far more complicated. Dawn broke over Blackthorn Kingdom beneath a sky the color of steel. No one slept. Not the guards. Not the council. Not the Alpha clans whose heirs had vanished into the wilderness. And certainly not Alpha King Kale Blackthorn. The throne room had transformed into a war chamber. Maps covered the stone table. Scouts came and went every few minutes. Messengers rode until their horses collapsed. The entire kingdom had one objective: find the cubs, before someone else did. Because news of their disappearance was already spreading beyond Blackthorn's borders. And if rival packs learned that 3 future Alpha heirs were unprotected, or would follow, Kale stood over the map, his jaw clenched. Every report made the situation worse. No ransom demands. No signs of abduction. No evidence of enemy involvement. Only one disturbing fact repeated again and again. The trail kept pointing toward Lyra. That made no sense. An exiled Omega couldn't evade royal trackers. She couldn't survive deep wilderness with 3 children. And yet every clue suggested exactly that. Commander Riker entered the chamber carrying a fresh report. Mud stained his boots. Exhaustion lined his face. But his eyes were sharp, focused, determined. What did you find? Kale asked. Riker placed several torn scraps of cloth on the table. The room fell silent. Kale immediately recognized the material. Part of Lyra's cloak. It was found near a rogue wolf attack site. Several council members exchanged looks. Elder Varek spoke first. Then she has the children. Riker's expression darkened. No. The room turned toward him. No. The evidence suggests she protected them. Silence followed. Riker continued. We found rogue wolf blood. He pointed toward the map. Several animals were injured. Meaning? Kel asked. Meaning someone fought to defend the cubs. A council member scoffed. An Omega. Riker met his gaze without hesitation. Yes. The room grew uncomfortable. Because none of them wanted to hear that. None of them wanted to believe the woman they had condemned was risking her life for the kingdom's heirs. Varek slammed his hand against the table. That proves nothing. No, Riker replied calmly. It proves more than the evidence used during her trial. The insult landed exactly where intended. Several council members looked away. Kale remained silent. But something had begun to change inside him. Small crack. A tiny fracture in the certainty he had clung to since the trial. For days he had convinced himself the council was right. That Lyra was guilty. That exile was necessary. Yet every new discovery seemed to challenge that belief. And Kale hated it. Because deep down, he remembered the woman Lyra truly was. A woman who had spent years helping others. A woman who never sought power. A woman who once saved his life. His thoughts were interrupted by another messenger rushing into the room. The young warrior dropped to one knee. My king. What is it? We found more tracks. Hope flashed across the room. Where? The messenger swallowed. Northwestern mountains. Kale immediately moved. Prepare my wolf. Several elders looked shocked. You intend to join the search personally? Kale's gaze hardened. They are my people. What he didn't say aloud was far more complicated. Because part of him wanted answers. And those answers seemed increasingly tied to Lyra. Hours later, Kale rode through dense forest atop his enormous black wolf. The search force stretched across miles of wilderness. Trackers moved ahead. Scouts spread through nearby valleys. Every sign was examined. Every footprint studied. Yet Lyra remained impossible to find. It was as if the forest itself protected her. Several times they located trails. Only for those trails to vanish completely. Several times they discovered campfires. Only to arrive hours too late. Days passed. Then a week. Still nothing. The frustration became unbearable. Meanwhile, neighboring packs began demanding explanations. Rumors spread rapidly. Some claimed Blackthorn had lost control of its heirs. Others claimed a rebellion was underway. A few even whispered something more dangerous. That the cubs had willingly abandoned the kingdom. That rumor terrified the council most. 'Cause if true, it revealed a truth no ruler wanted exposed. The future leaders trusted an exiled Omega more than their own kingdom. Far beyond the searchlines, Lyra and the cubs continued traveling. The journey was brutal. Food became scarce. Storms swept through mountain passes. Danger followed them constantly. Yet something unexpected happened. The children began changing. Not physically, emotionally. They laughed again. They smiled more often. They seemed happier sleeping beneath trees than inside palace walls. At first Lyra didn't understand why. Then one evening Rowan quietly explained. Nobody expects anything from us out here. The words struck her. Because she understood immediately. The heirs had spent their entire lives carrying impossible expectations. Future leaders. Future warriors. Future alphas. Every day shaped by pressure. Every mistake criticized. Every weakness punished. With Lyra they were simply children. For perhaps the first time in their lives. Weeks later they reached a hidden valley surrounded by towering cliffs. Ancient ruins stood at its center. Covered in vines. Forgotten by history. Lyra froze the moment she saw them. Something felt familiar. Uncomfortably familiar. She couldn't explain it. Yet her heart began pounding. Drawn toward the ruins. Toward something waiting. The cubs followed her through crumbling stone pathways. Dust covered everything. Time had erased nearly all traces of civilization. Almost. Then Elias found it. A symbol carved into black stone. The moment Lyra saw it, her breath caught. A crescent moon intertwined with a crown. Ancient, royal, powerful, and impossible. Her fingers trembled as she touched the carving. Memories flashed through her mind. Fragments from childhood. Stories her mother once told. Stories she had dismissed as fantasy. Legends of a lost bloodline. A royal family erased centuries ago. Lyra stepped back, confused, afraid, because she recognized the symbol. She had seen it before. On an old pendant her mother kept hidden. A pendant that disappeared after her death. Before she could think further, Rowan spoke. "What does it mean?" Lyra slowly shook her head. "I don't know." But that wasn't entirely true. A terrible possibility had begun forming inside her mind. One she wasn't ready to face. Far away, in Blackthorn Kingdom, another discovery was being made. A royal archivist entered Cale's chambers carrying ancient records. Dust covered the books. The pages were brittle with age. "What is this?" Cale asked. "The symbol, my king." Cale immediately sat upright. "What symbol?" The archivist opened a page and revealed the exact same crest found in the ruins. A crescent moon intertwined with a crown. Cale stared. His expression slowly changed. Confusion. Disbelief. Because according to records, that symbol belonged to a bloodline believed extinct. A royal bloodline older than Blackthorn itself. The archivist's voice lowered. Few remember this history. Cale never looked away from the page. "What history?" The old wolf swallowed, then spoke words that would change everything. "The bloodline of the first kings." The room became silent. And for the first time since Lyra's exile, Cale realized he might not know who she truly was at all. And somewhere beyond the mountains, the woman he cast out was unknowingly standing on the threshold of a secret powerful enough to shake every kingdom in existence. The symbol haunted Lyra, even after they left the ruins. Even after night settled across the hidden valley. Even after the cubs fell asleep beside the fire. She couldn't stop thinking about it. The crescent moon. The crown. The ancient stone. And the stories her mother used to whisper when no one else was listening. Stories Lyra had dismissed as fairy tales. Stories about a bloodline that vanished. Family erased from history. A royal house destroyed long before Blackthorn Kingdom existed. Back then Lyra had laughed. Now she wasn't laughing. Because the symbol existed. And somehow it was connected to her. The fire crackled softly. The cubs slept peacefully nearby. Lyra stared into the flames. Then another memory surfaced. One she had spent years trying to forget. 7 years earlier, a younger Cale Blackthorn lay bleeding in a ravine. Rain poured from the sky. Lightning illuminated the mountains. The future Alpha King had been ambushed during a border patrol. 3 enemy wolves surrounded him. His warriors were dead. His body was broken. And death was moments away. Cale still remembered that night. Pain. The helplessness. The certainty that he would never see another sunrise. Then someone appeared. A young Omega. Silver hair. Fearless eyes. Lyra. She should have run. Every instinct should have told her to flee. Instead she charged directly into danger. She distracted the attackers. Led them away. Risked her own life. And somehow kept Cale alive long enough for reinforcements to arrive. When he woke days later, he searched for her. Thanked her. Promised he would never forget. 4 years afterward he kept that promise. Or at least he believed he had. Until the trial. Until silence became betrayal. Back in the present, Cale sat alone inside his chambers. The memory tortured him. Because the more he remembered, the harder it became to believe Lyra was capable of treason. A knock interrupted his thoughts. "Enter." Commander Riker stepped inside. His expression was grim. Cale immediately noticed. "What happened?" Riker placed several documents on the desk. "The investigation." Cale frowned. "What investigation?" "The one that should have happened before the trial." The words landed heavily. Riker unfolded the reports. One after another. Witness statements, guard records, patrol schedules, communication logs. And suddenly a pattern emerged. An ugly pattern. Evidence had disappeared. Records had been altered. Witnesses had changed their stories. Someone had manipulated the entire case. Cale's expression darkened with every page. Who? Riker hesitated. For the first time, uncertainty appeared in his eyes. That's the problem. Cale slowly stood. Tell me. Riker inhaled deeply. The evidence leads directly into the council. Silence filled the room. A dangerous silence. Because accusing council members was nearly impossible. Accusing Elder Varek was worse. The old wolf controlled half the kingdom's political structure. But the evidence kept pointing toward him. Again and again. Cale looked toward the window. Storm clouds gathered outside. His instincts screamed that something much larger was unfolding. Something hidden. Something rotten. And Lyra had become its victim. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the kingdom, Luna Selene received troubling news. Her private servant entered quickly. Pardon me, Luna. Selene glanced up. What is it? The king reopened the investigation. For the first time in years, genuine fear flashed across her face. Only for a second, then it vanished, replaced by calm. Controlled, dangerous calm. Who authorized it? The king. Selene rose slowly, her mind already racing. This wasn't supposed to happen. The trial was finished. Lyra was gone. The problem should have been solved. Instead, everything was unraveling. And if Cale learned the truth, years of planning could collapse overnight. Because Selene wasn't merely responsible for the false accusations. She had helped create them. Not alone. Never alone. Someone far more powerful had guided everything from the shadows. Someone who needed Lyra removed. Someone terrified of what Lyra might eventually discover. Back in the wilderness, Lyra unknowingly moved closer to those answers. Days passed. The hidden valley became temporary shelter. Food was plentiful. Water flowed freely. And for the first time since Exile, survival no longer felt impossible. The cubs thrived there. Especially Elias. The youngest heir spent hours exploring the ancient ruins. One afternoon he came running toward Lyra. Excitement filled his face. Look what I found. He held up a small metal object. Pendant. Covered in dirt. The moment Lyra saw it, her heart stopped. The crescent moon. The crown. The exact same symbol. Her hands shook as she took it. Impossible. It couldn't be. Yet it was. The pendant looked identical to the one her mother once owned. A pendant that vanished years ago. How had it reached this valley? Questions piled upon questions. None had answers. That night, unable to sleep, Lyra examined the pendant more carefully. Eventually she noticed something hidden inside. Tiny engraved letters. Almost invisible. Her pulse quickened. Carefully she cleaned away centuries of grime. Then the inscription became clear. Not a message. Name. Family name. Moonshade. Lyra froze. The pendant slipped from her fingers. Her own surname. The name she had carried her entire life. Suddenly every story her mother told felt less like fantasy. And more like history. Hidden history. Dangerous history. Before she could process further, footsteps approached. Rowan appeared beside her. You okay? Lyra forced a smile. I'm fine. He didn't believe her. None of the cubs would. Because over the past weeks they had learned something important. Lyra always lied when trying to protect others. Rowan sat beside her. What did you find? For several seconds she considered telling him, then stopped. Because she wasn't ready. Not yet. The truth felt too large. Too dangerous. Too uncertain. Far away, Blackthorn Kingdom faced problems of its own. Neighboring alpha packs were losing patience. Several demanded immediate access to the search efforts. Others accused Blackthorn of hiding information. Tensions escalated rapidly, were no longer felt impossible. Then another disaster struck. A scouting force discovered an abandoned camp. Fresh, recent, undeniably connected to Lyra. Yet something else had been left behind. Carved symbol. The same crescent moon and crown. When the report reached Kale, his blood ran cold. Because now the symbol appeared everywhere. Near Lyra. Near the missing heirs. Inside forgotten ruins. Inside ancient records. And every answer created new questions. That evening Kale ordered the royal archives opened completely. Hidden chambers. Sealed records. Restricted histories. Everything. Hours later an elderly archivist emerged carrying a single weathered book. One nobody had touched in decades. The old wolf's hands trembled. "My king!" Kale looked up. "What is it?" The archivist swallowed. Then opened the book. Inside was a painted portrait. Woman. Silver hair. Golden eyes. A royal crown. Kale stared. His entire body went still. Because the woman looked almost identical to Lyra. The archivist's voice barely rose above a whisper. "This is Queen Lyra." Kale couldn't look away. The last ruler of the first kings. A chill swept through the room. Then the archivist revealed the part that changed everything. The royal bloodline was never proven extinct. Kale slowly lifted his eyes. The old wolf's expression was pale. Terrified. As if speaking the words themselves was dangerous. The surviving descendants were hidden. Silence. Absolute silence. Then Kale asked the question already forming inside his mind. "Hidden where?" The archivist hesitated. Then whispered. "Among the Omegas." And at that exact moment, for the first time, the impossible possibility became real. Lyra Moonshade might not be an ordinary Omega at all. She might be the rightful heir to a throne older than kingdoms themselves. And somewhere in the shadows, the people responsible for her exile were beginning to realize their greatest mistake. They hadn't destroyed her. They had set her free. The moment Lyra learned the truth about the Moonshade name, everything changed. Not immediately, not overnight, and not in the dramatic way legends often describe. Because discovering hidden blood didn't magically erase pain. It didn't heal betrayal. It didn't erase the memory of standing alone before thousands while the kingdom condemned her. The truth only gave her something she hadn't possessed before. Reason. A reason to stop surviving. And start becoming something greater. Months passed. Then years. The world slowly forgot the exiled Omega. At least that was what Blackthorn believed. But deep within the hidden valley, a different story was unfolding. The ancient ruins were not abandoned after all. They were waiting. Waiting for someone carrying the blood of the first kings. Waiting for Lyra. Old chambers were uncovered beneath the valley. Secret tunnels emerged behind collapsed stone walls. Libraries filled with forgotten knowledge appeared beneath layers of dust. And within those halls, Lyra discovered the history stolen from her family. The first kings had never fallen naturally. They had been betrayed, poisoned, hunted, erased. Their descendants scattered among weaker bloodlines to survive. Over generations, their identity faded into myth. Until only fragments remained. Fragments hidden in stories. Fragments hidden in symbols. Fragments hidden in names like Moonshade. The more Lyra learned, the more she understood why someone had wanted her gone. If her heritage became known, entire kingdoms would face questions they never wanted asked. Entire ruling families would lose legitimacy. Entire systems of power could collapse. And suddenly her exile looked far less random, far less personal. Someone had feared what she might become. Unfortunately for them, their fear had arrived too late. Because Lyra wasn't alone. The cubs grew beside her. And they changed just as dramatically. Rowan became the strategist. Even as a teenager, he could study a battlefield once and remember every detail. He saw patterns others missed. Weaknesses others overlooked. Darius became a force of nature. Relentless, fearless, the strongest warrior among them. His training pushed him beyond ordinary alpha standards. Then there was Elias. Quiet one. The observant one. The child who listened more than he spoke. As he matured, something unusual emerged. Power nobody could explain. Animals obeyed him instinctively. Ancient wolves approached him without fear. Even wild predators seemed drawn toward him. It disturbed Lyra, because it reminded her of old stories buried within the royal archives. Stories connected to the first kings. Stories she wasn't yet ready to share. One evening, 5 years after their exile, Lyra stood atop a cliff overlooking the valley. The settlement below had grown. Dozens of wolves now lived there. Then hundreds. Not rogues. Not criminals. People abandoned by their packs. Rejected omegas. War orphans. Exiles. The forgotten. They arrived with nothing. And found something they never expected. Home. Word spread quietly. Then rapidly. Across mountains and territories. There was a hidden sanctuary. A place where status mattered less than character. A place ruled by a woman who had once been discarded by the world. People began calling her something strange. Not Omega. Not Exile. Not Outcast. Queen. At first Lyra hated the title. Then she stopped correcting people. Because leadership wasn't something she sought. It was something circumstances forced upon her. One afternoon Rowan approached carrying reports. His expression was serious. "We have a problem." Lyra accepted the papers. "What kind of problem?" "Blackthorn scouts." Her eyes narrowed. 4 years she expected this moment. The kingdom had searched relentlessly at first. Eventually the efforts faded. At least publicly. Apparently they never truly stopped. "They're getting closer," Rowan continued. "How close?" "Too close." The answer was enough. Lyra looked toward the valley below. Toward the people relying on her. Toward the life they built together. She wouldn't lose it. Not again. That night she gathered the cubs. Though calling them cubs no longer felt accurate. They stood taller now. Stronger. More dangerous. Future alphas in every sense. "We need to prepare." Darius smiled immediately. "Finally. Challenge." Rowan folded his arms. "What are you expecting?" Lyra stared toward the distant mountains. "Eventually Blackthorn will find us." Elias remained quiet. Then asked the question nobody else wanted to. "What happens when they do?" Lyra didn't answer. Because she wasn't sure. Part of her still carried old wounds. Part of her still remembered Kale's silence. And part of her feared what would happen when the past finally caught up. Far away, Blackthorn Kingdom faced growing instability. The missing heirs had become legends. Stories. Most people believed they were dead. Kale never accepted that. Not once. 5 years had passed. 5 years of searching. 5 years of regret. 5 years of unanswered questions. The Alpha King had changed. The proud certainty he once possessed was gone. Replaced by something heavier. Every new investigation uncovered more corruption. More lies. More manipulation. Evidence continued pointing toward Elder Varek and several council members. Yet proof remained frustratingly incomplete. Someone had hidden their tracks well. Oh well. Then came the report that changed everything. A border fortress had fallen. Not destroyed. Defeated. An entire Alpha force had been routed without significant casualties. The attackers showed discipline, strategy, precision. Almost as if they deliberately avoided unnecessary bloodshed. Kale studied the battlefield reports. Something felt wrong. The tactics were unfamiliar, yet strangely elegant. Then another fortress fell. And another. Still no slaughter. Still no occupation. Only humiliation. As if someone was sending a message. Weeks later, the mysterious army finally revealed itself. Thousands gathered to witness the confrontation. Blackthorn warriors stood ready. Neighboring alphas arrived. Tension filled the air. Then she appeared. A lone rider emerged from the horizon. Silver hair moved with the wind. Black armor reflected sunlight. Golden eyes held absolute confidence. The battlefield went silent. Every wolf stared. Every warrior froze. Because despite the years, they recognized her. Lyra Moonshade, the exiled Omega. Only she no longer looked like an Omega. She looked like a ruler. Behind her marched an army unlike anything Blackthorn had ever seen. Disciplined, loyal, fearless. And at her side stood 3 young warriors. Rowan, Darius, Elias, alive, stronger than anyone imagined. Shock exploded across the battlefield. Some wolves cried. Others fell silent. Many simply stared, unable to process what they were seeing. Far above them, Kale stood on the fortress wall. His breath caught. For 5 years he searched. For 5 years he wondered. For 5 years he regretted. And now she stood before him again. More powerful than ever. More beautiful than memory allowed. And completely beyond his reach. The silence stretched. Then Lyra raised her eyes toward him. For one brief moment, the entire world seemed to disappear. Just 2 people. One betrayal. 5 years of consequences. Neither spoke. Neither moved. Then something happened that shattered the tension instantly. A neighboring Alpha Lord stepped forward and laughed. An Omega commands this army. Several warriors chuckled. Mockery spread. Old prejudices resurfaced. The Alpha Lord drew his blade. "I'll end this myself." Before anyone could react, Darius stepped forward. The young warrior moved like lightning. One strike. One movement. One devastating display of power. The Alpha Lord crashed into the dirt unconscious before he even realized the fight had begun. Silence returned. Only this time it wasn't disbelief. It was fear. Because everyone suddenly understood something terrifying. The children they lost had become monsters. And the woman they exiled had created them. Then Elias stepped forward. Looked directly at Lyra. And spoke words that echoed across the battlefield. Words destined to shake every kingdom. "Mother!" The world stopped. And Blackthorn Kingdom realized this story was far bigger than anyone ever imagined. The battlefield became completely silent. Not quiet. Not tense. Silent. The kind of silence that arrives when reality suddenly stops making sense. Thousands of wolves stood frozen. Warriors forgot to breathe. Nobles stared in disbelief. Even seasoned alphas looked shaken. One word had done it. Mother. Elias had called Lyra mother. The sound still echoed across the valley. Kale felt the ground disappear beneath him. His eyes moved from Elias to Lyra, then back again. Questions exploded through his mind. Impossible questions. How? When? Why? For 5 years the kingdom believed the heirs had been kidnapped, manipulated, or deceived. Yet the young warrior's voice carried no hesitation, no fear, no uncertainty, only love, only loyalty, only certainty. Mother. Not queen. Not guardian. Not protector. Mother. Across the battlefield, whispers spread rapidly. The neighboring Alpha Lords immediately began speculating. Some believed Lyra had secretly adopted the heirs. Others suspected darker possibilities. Rumors multiplied within seconds. Exactly as Lyra expected. Because she knew what Elias had done. He had thrown a spark into dry grass. And now the fire would spread. Yet she remained calm. Completely calm. The years had taught her patience. Control. Discipline. The old Lyra might have been overwhelmed by thousands of eyes watching her. This Lyra wasn't. She sat confidently atop her black wolf. Golden eyes scanning the crowd. A ruler observing a kingdom that once cast her aside. Finally Kale stepped forward. His voice carried across the battlefield. Elias. The young warrior looked up. No fear. No excitement. No reaction. That alone hurt Kale more than he expected. Years ago Elias had idolized him. Now the boy stared at him like a stranger. Cale swallowed. Are you being forced to stay with her? Murmurs spread immediately. A reasonable question. A desperate question. And one Cale already feared hearing answered. Elias smiled slightly. Then shook his head. No. The answer struck like a hammer. Cale's jaw tightened. Did she take you from Blackthorn? Again Elias shook his head. No. The whispers grew louder. Several nobles exchanged worried looks. Because the story they told themselves was beginning to crack. Then Elias delivered the final blow. We followed her. The crowd erupted. Confusion exploded. Arguments broke out instantly. Nobody wanted to believe it. Nobody. Because if 3 future alpha heirs willingly abandoned the kingdom, what did that say about the kingdom itself? Cale heard none of it. His focus remained on Elias. The child he had spent years searching for. The child who should have been safe inside Blackthorn. The child who had chosen someone else. The realization cut deeper than any wound. Before Cale could respond, another voice interrupted. Elder Varric, the old council leader, stepped forward aggressively. His face twisted with anger. This is manipulation. Lyra's eyes shifted toward him. Cold. Dangerously cold. For the first time in years, Varric looked uncomfortable. The heirs were children, he continued. They didn't understand their actions. Rowan suddenly laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. Every head turned toward him. The young strategist stepped forward. No. His voice carried surprising authority. We understood perfectly. Varric's expression darkened. You were children. And yet we still recognized the truth. The insult landed precisely where intended. Several wolves lowered their eyes. 'Cause everyone remembered. The trial. The accusations. Exile. Many had watched without questioning anything. 3 children had seen more clearly than thousands of adults. The realization stung. Varric pointed toward Lyra. She corrupted you. This time Darius laughed. A much more dangerous sound. She saved us. The battlefield quieted again. Cale's attention sharpened immediately. Saved us. The words felt important. Too important. Before anyone could explore further, Lyra finally spoke. 5 years. 5 years since most of Blackthorn had heard her voice. The sound carried effortlessly across the valley. Enough. Instant silence followed. Not because she shouted. Because authority radiated naturally from her. The difference was impossible to ignore. The broken Omega was gone. In her place stood someone entirely different. Someone who no longer needed permission to be heard. Lyra looked toward Cale. Their eyes met. The weight of 5 years hung between them. Unspoken words. Unhealed wounds. Unanswered questions. Cale opened his mouth. Then stopped. Because he realized something terrifying. He didn't know what to say. An apology felt too small. An explanation felt meaningless. Nothing could undo what happened. Lyra saved him from speaking. We didn't come here for war. Confusion spread instantly. Several Alpha Lords frowned. If not war, one demanded, then why come? Lyra's answer arrived immediately. Truth. The single word unsettled everyone. Especially Varric. Especially Celine. Both stood unnaturally still. Because they understood something others didn't. Truth was dangerous. Truth destroyed lies. Truth exposed secrets. And they carried more secrets than anyone present. Meanwhile, hidden among the crowd, Luna Celine watched Lyra carefully. Years had passed. Yet the sight of her still ignited old hatred. Old jealousy. Old fear. Because Lyra represented everything Celine couldn't control. Worse, Lyra looked stronger than ever. That wasn't supposed to happen. Exile was supposed to destroy her. Instead it transformed her. Celine's gaze shifted toward Elias. Then Rowan. Then Darius. Her stomach tightened. The heirs weren't merely alive. They were devoted. Completely devoted. Something had gone terribly wrong. Across the battlefield, Kale struggled to focus. Because every time he looked at Lyra, another memory surfaced. The trial, the silence, the disappointment in her eyes. For years he convinced himself he did the right thing. Now he wasn't so sure. Then another realization struck. Painful one. She never once looked happy to see him. Not once. No warmth. No relief. No lingering affection. Nothing. Only distance. Only caution. Only scars. The consequence of betrayal stood directly before him. And Kale hated himself for recognizing it too late. The tension grew. Questions multiplied. Nobody trusted anyone. Nobody knew what would happen next. Then a scout suddenly rode into the valley at full speed. The warrior looked terrified. "My king!" Kale immediately turned. "What is it?" The scout's face had gone pale. "We found the records." Varric visibly stiffened. Kale noticed. Instantly. "What records?" The scout swallowed. Then spoke words that changed everything. "The sealed council archives." The battlefield froze. Varric's eyes widened. Celine's expression cracked for the first time. Fear. Real fear. Kale stepped forward. What was inside? The scout hesitated, as if struggling to believe the answer himself. Then finally he said it. "Evidence." A dangerous silence followed. The kind that appears before kingdoms collapse. "What evidence?" Kale demanded. The scout looked directly toward Elder Varric, then toward Luna Celine, and finally back toward the king. Evidence that Lyra was innocent. The world exploded. Disbelief. Yes. Everything happened at once. Because the truth everyone feared had finally surfaced. The trial was a lie. The exile was a lie. The kingdom had destroyed one of its own. And the people responsible were standing in plain sight. Yet even that revelation wasn't the most shocking part. Because among those recovered records was another secret. A secret connected to Lyra's bloodline. A secret capable of shaking every throne in existence. And before the day ended, the entire kingdom would learn who Lyra Moonshade truly was. The battlefield dissolved into chaos. Voices clashed from every direction. Accusations, arguments, denials, fear. For years Blackthorn Kingdom had built its foundation upon a single belief. Lyra Moonshade was a traitor. Now that belief was collapsing in front of thousands of witnesses. Kale stood motionless. His eyes never left Elder Varric. The old council leader looked different now. Smaller, weaker. Not because his power had vanished. Because his mask had. The scout remained kneeling, clutching the recovered documents. Evidence powerful enough to destroy reputations. Powerful enough to destroy kingdoms. Kale extended his hand. "Give them to me." The scout obeyed immediately. The battlefield watched as Kale opened the first report. His expression darkened. Then another report. Then another. The evidence was overwhelming. Witness statements altered. Records forged. Messages erased. Official seals falsified. The entire case against Lyra had been manufactured. Carefully. Deliberately. Systematically. Kale's grip tightened around the papers. Years of regret suddenly became something worse. Rage. Not toward Lyra. Toward himself. 'Cause he had allowed it. He had trusted corrupt men instead of trusting the woman who once saved his life. And now the cost stood before him. Stronger than ever. Further away than ever. Slowly Kale lifted his gaze. Elder Varric. The old wolf remained silent. "Tell me this isn't true." The battlefield waited. Everyone hoped for an explanation. A misunderstanding. Something. Anything. Instead Varric smiled. Terrible smile. The smile of a man who realized hiding was no longer possible. "It doesn't matter anymore." Shock rippled through the crowd. Kale stared. "What?" Varric stepped forward. His voice rose confidently. "The truth changes nothing. It changes everything." "No." The elder pointed directly toward Lyra. Because she was always the real threat. The crowd turned toward her. Curiosity replaced confusion. Threat? What threat? Lyra herself looked unsurprised. Almost as if she expected this moment. As if she had been waiting for it. Cale's instincts sharpened. Because suddenly this felt larger than political corruption. Much larger. Varric laughed softly. You still don't understand. Then he looked directly at Lyra. For the first time in years, genuine hatred burned in his eyes. You should have stayed hidden. Silence. The statement landed heavily. Because it implied something terrifying. Lyra hadn't been targeted because of something she did. She had been targeted because of who she was. Cale felt the realization forming. The symbol. The ruins. Pendant. The ancient records. Everything connected. Everything pointed toward one truth. Varric spread his arms dramatically. Tell them. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The old wolf's smile widened. Tell them who you are. Every eye turned toward Lyra. Thousands waited. The wind swept across the valley. Silver hair moved around her face. For several moments she remained silent. Then she stepped forward. And the atmosphere changed instantly. Not through force. Not through intimidation. Something older. Something deeper. The kind of presence that made wolves instinctively pay attention. I didn't know the truth myself. Her voice carried across the battlefield. Perfectly calm. Perfectly controlled. I spent most of my life believing I was an ordinary Omega. The crowd listened carefully. Nobody interrupted. Then Exile gave me something the kingdom never allowed me. A pause. Answers. Several wolves exchanged nervous looks. Because everyone sensed history approaching. The kind of history capable of changing everything. Lyra slowly removed the pendant hanging around her neck. The ancient crescent moon. The ancient crown. Gasps spread immediately. Many recognized the symbol now. Especially after recent discoveries. Cale's heartbeat quickened. He already knew where this was heading. Yet hearing it felt impossible. Lyra raised the pendant. My family carried this symbol for generations. The battlefield remained completely silent. Then she spoke the words that shattered centuries of lies. I am Lyra Moonshade. Was the last living descendant of the first kings. The world stopped. Absolute disbelief swept across the valley. Some wolves laughed nervously. Others looked horrified. Many simply stared. Unable to process what they had heard. Because everyone knew the legends. The first kings. The original rulers. The bloodline that existed before kingdoms divided. Before clans formed. Before modern alpha society emerged. They were supposed to be extinct. Erased from history. Yet here she stood. Alive. Real. And carrying their blood. Cale felt his chest tighten. The truth finally clicked into place. Why Varric feared her. Why evidence was fabricated. Why exile happened. Why someone worked so hard to destroy her. She wasn't merely an innocent Omega. She represented a threat to every corrupted power structure built over centuries. Across the battlefield, neighboring Alpha Lords exchanged alarmed looks. Political calculations immediately began. Because Lyra's existence changed everything. Legitimacy, authority, inheritance, power. Nothing remained simple anymore. Then another voice broke the silence. Elias, the youngest heir, stepped beside Lyra. His expression remained calm. Yet his eyes carried something extraordinary. Determination, pride, and another secret. One not yet revealed. Varric noticed immediately. His smile vanished. For the first time genuine fear appeared. Lyra saw it. And understood why. The elder wasn't afraid of her. Not truly. He was afraid of Elias. That realization sent a chill through her body. Because she had recently discovered something troubling. Something she kept hidden even from the boys. Ancient records described a rare bloodline gift. A connection between royal descendants and alpha heirs. Power thought lost centuries ago. Power connected directly to Elias. Before she could think further, Cale spoke. His voice sounded strained. Why? Everyone turned toward him. His eyes never left Varek. Why frame her? The question echoed through the valley. Varek laughed bitterly. Because the first kings should have stayed dead. Shock spread again. The old wolf no longer bothered hiding. No longer bothered pretending. Years of secrets poured from him. Our ancestors ended their rule for a reason. Cale's expression darkened. You mean they murdered them? Varek didn't answer. The silence was answer enough. The battlefield erupted once more. History itself was unraveling. Centuries of lies exposed in a single afternoon. Yet another revelation still remained. And it arrived from an unexpected source. A royal archivist emerged from the crowd. The same elderly wolf who had shown Cale the ancient portrait. He carried another book. Another record. Another truth. My king. Cale turned. What is it? The old wolf looked toward Elias. Then toward Lyra. His hands trembled. There's more. Collective unease spread. More. How could there possibly be more? The archivist opened the book carefully. Ancient pages revealed a forgotten prophecy. One older than Blackthorn itself. The old wolf swallowed. Then read aloud. When the last moonshade returns. His voice shook. The royal heir shall stand beside her. Silence. Absolute silence. Then every eye slowly shifted toward Elias. The young warrior froze. Cale froze. Lyra froze. Because suddenly one impossible question appeared. A question none of them were prepared to answer. Why did the prophecy point directly toward him? And why did Elder Varek suddenly look terrified? The answer would change not only Elias's future, but the future of every kingdom in existence. The silence after the prophecy felt heavier than war. Thousands of wolves stood frozen beneath the open sky. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Every eye remained fixed on Elias. The young warrior who had once disappeared from Blackthorn as a child. The same child who now stood beside Lyra as if he belonged there. As if fate itself had placed him at her side. The royal archivist lowered the ancient book slowly. His hands still trembled. Because even he understood what this meant. The prophecy wasn't vague. It wasn't symbolic. It was specific. Terrifyingly specific. And Elder Varek's reaction had confirmed it. The old wolf looked shaken. For the first time since his crimes were exposed. Not angry. Not defensive. Afraid. Truly afraid. Cale noticed immediately. His instincts locked onto it. You know something. Varek remained silent. Cale stepped forward. You've known something this entire time. Still silence. The Alpha King's patience finally shattered. Years of regret. Years of guilt. Years of searching. Years of unanswered questions. Everything erupted at once. His alpha aura exploded across the battlefield. The ground trembled. Several warriors instinctively stepped back. Answer me! The roar echoed through the valley. Varek flinched. Small movement, but enough. Cale saw it. The old wolf wasn't confident anymore. The secrets protecting him were gone. Slowly Varek lowered his head. And finally spoke. The boy was never supposed to survive. A collective gasp swept through the crowd. Lyra's heart skipped. Elias frowned. Cale felt cold rage spread through his chest. What does that mean? Varek closed his eyes. For a moment he looked old. Very old. Like a man crushed beneath decades of hidden sins. Then the truth emerged. Years ago. Before the disappearance. Before the exile. Before everything. An assassination plot targeted 3 alpha heirs. Rowan, Darius, and Elias. The plan was simple. Kill the future. Control the kingdom. The murders would appear accidental. No one would question it. No one would suspect the council. Everything had been arranged perfectly. Except for one problem. Lyra. The battlefield listened in stunned silence. Varric continued. She found them first. Flashbacks exploded through Cale's mind. Missing records. Destroyed reports. Contradictory witness statements. Suddenly everything connected. Years earlier. Hidden attack. 3 children in danger. 1 Omega standing between them and death. Varric's voice shook. She saved all 3. The crowd erupted. Shock rolled through the valley like thunder. Cale stared at Lyra. Unable to breathe. Unable to speak. Because suddenly he understood. The cubs hadn't followed her because she was kind. They hadn't followed her because she protected them during exile. Their loyalty started long before that. Long before the kingdom noticed. Long before anyone understood. She saved their lives. And nobody knew. Nobody except the children. Tears filled Elias's eyes. For the first time memories returned clearly. Fragments. Broken pieces. Dark forest. Masked wolves. Fear. And Lyra. Standing in front of him. Bleeding. Protecting them. Saving them. The realization hit him like a storm. She wasn't merely family. She always had been. Across the battlefield. Rowan clenched his fists. Darius lowered his head. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. The truth explained everything. Why they trusted her. Why they followed her. Why they never returned. Because years before the exile, Lyra had already become their hero. Meanwhile Cale felt something break inside him. Painful realization. A devastating one. Not only had Lyra saved his life, she saved theirs too. And he rewarded her with exile. His chest tightened. Regret transformed into agony. Because every new truth made his failure impossible to ignore. He remembered the trial. Her eyes. The disappointment. The hurt. The moment she realized he wasn't going to defend her. The memory became unbearable. Slowly Cale walked forward. The battlefield watched. Nobody understood what he intended. Not even Lyra. Then something happened that stunned the entire kingdom. The Alpha King dropped to one knee. Gasps exploded instantly. Nobles looked horrified. Warriors stared in disbelief. Neighboring Alpha Lords looked shocked. Because Alpha Kings did not kneel. Especially not publicly. Especially not before an Omega. Yet Cale remained there. Head lowered. Pride abandoned. Ego shattered. At last he spoke. Not as a king. As a man. I was wrong. The words echoed through the valley. Simple. Honest. Painful. Lyra stood motionless. Cale continued. I failed you. Silence followed. No excuses. No justifications. No attempts to shift blame. Only truth. I should have trusted you. His voice cracked slightly. The crowd noticed. So did Lyra. I should have listened. Another pause. I should have protected you. Years of guilt poured from him. Every sentence carried weight. Every word carried regret. For the first time since the trial, Lyra saw the truth in his eyes. Not deception. Not manipulation. Regret. Real regret. The kind that arrives too late. The kind that changes nothing. And perhaps that hurt most. Because part of her had dreamed about this moment. Dreamed he would understand. Dreamed he would apologize. Dreamed he would realize the truth. Yet now that it happened, the wound remained. Healing wasn't that simple. Forgiveness wasn't that easy. Cale finally lifted his gaze. His eyes met hers. If punishment is required. The entire battlefield held its breath. Then punish me. Shock spread again. Even Varric looked stunned. Cale meant it. Everyone could see that. The Alpha King would accept judgment. Accept consequences. Accept responsibility. Something almost unheard of among rulers. Yet Lyra didn't answer immediately. Instead she looked across the battlefield. Across the kingdom. Across the wolves who once watched her destruction. Many lowered their eyes. Shame. Others looked heartbroken. Some were crying openly. 'Cause the truth hurt. Not just Cale. Everyone. The kingdom had failed her. Collectively. Then Lyra spoke, and every voice disappeared instantly. I didn't come for revenge. Confusion swept through the crowd. Several wolves exchanged looks. Not revenge. After everything. After the exile. After the betrayal. After the lies. Lyra slowly turned toward Verek. Toward Celine. Toward those truly responsible. Her expression hardened. No. A chill spread through the valley. I came for justice. The distinction terrified them. Because revenge was emotional. Justice was final. Celine's face lost color. For the first time since the confrontation began, panic appeared. Real panic. The kind that arrives when consequences become unavoidable. Lyra saw it. And knew the moment had finally arrived. The years of running were over. The years of hiding were over. The years of silence were over. Now came judgment. Now came truth. Now came consequences. The kingdom waited. The guilty waited. Even Kale waited. Then Lyra announced the words that would decide everyone's future. Tomorrow. Her voice carried across the valley. The trial begins. Trial. Not a battle. Not an execution. Trial. Public. Open. Unavoidable. The same justice denied to her. Now returned to those who denied it. Fear spread through the guilty. Hope spread through the innocent. And somewhere deep inside Blackthorn Kingdom, history itself prepared to change. Because by the end of that trial, thrones would fall, secrets would die. And one final revelation still waited in the shadows. A revelation capable of changing everything they thought they knew about Elias. And about destiny itself. The trial began at sunrise. Not inside a hidden council chamber. Not behind closed doors. Not where powerful wolves could manipulate truth in secret. Lyra made certain of that. The trial would take place in the Great Square. The exact same place where she had once stood in chains. The exact same place where thousands watched her life collapse. Now those same thousands gathered again. Only this time everything was different. The platform remained. The stone steps remained. The throne remained. But power had shifted. The crowd knew it. The council knew it. And most importantly, the guilty knew it. By mid-morning, the square overflowed with wolves. Blackthorn citizens. Neighboring alpha lords. Warriors. Elders. Families. Everyone came. Because everyone wanted answers. And everyone wanted to witness history. At the center of the platform sat three figures. Elder Verek. Luna Celine. And the remaining council conspirators. No royal robes. No authority. No protection. Only accused criminals waiting for judgment. For the first time in decades, Verek looked vulnerable. The old wolf's confidence was gone. His influence was gone. His control was gone. The kingdom had finally seen him clearly. And it terrified him. Nearby, Kale stood silently. Not on the throne. Beside it. Deliberate choice. Symbolic one. Because until truth finished its work, he refused to sit where authority once blinded him. The crowd noticed. The message spread quickly. Kale wasn't hiding from responsibility. He was facing it. Then Lyra arrived. The square fell silent instantly. No announcement. No ceremony. No fanfare. She simply walked forward. Yet every eye followed her. Because she no longer carried the presence of an exile. She carried the presence of a ruler. Behind her stood Rowan, Darius, Elias, the three heirs, the three missing cubs, the three children whose disappearance changed everything. The trial began. One witness after another stepped forward. Guards, archivists, servants, former council members. Each testimony revealed another piece of the conspiracy. Forged evidence, bribed witnesses, secret meetings, hidden records. Every lie became visible. Every secret became public. Hour after hour the truth dismantled years of deception. The crowd reacted with growing anger. Because corruption wasn't limited to Lyra's case. Verek had manipulated dozens of decisions. controlled promotions, destroyed rivals, silenced investigations. The kingdom had been poisoned from within. Then came Celine's turn. The future Luna stood before everyone, beautiful, elegant, and completely exposed. For years she perfected the image of innocence. Today that illusion shattered. Lyra faced her directly. Why? The question echoed through the square. Celine laughed softly. A broken laugh. The laugh of someone who realized the game was over. Then she answered honestly. For the first time. Because he loved you. Silence. The words struck harder than anyone expected. Cale froze. Lyra froze. The crowd froze. Celine looked directly at Lyra. Tears finally appeared in her eyes. Not from regret. From bitterness. You never saw it. Lyra remained silent. Celine continued. Even when he tried hiding it. Cale lowered his head. Because he couldn't deny it. Not anymore. Years ago feelings had existed. Before politics. Before manipulation. Before betrayal. Feelings neither of them fully understood. And Celine noticed. She always noticed. You were a threat. Her voice shook. Not because of power. She pointed toward Cale. Because of him. The confession stunned the square. Yet it changed nothing. Jealousy wasn't an excuse. Envy wasn't a defense. And Celine knew it. Eventually her gaze lowered. Defeated. Finished. The trial continued. By afternoon the verdict became unavoidable. Elder Varric. Guilty. Luna Celine. Guilty. The corrupt council members. Guilty. Their punishments followed immediately. Titles removed. Authority revoked. Assets seized. Permanent exile for the conspirators. Ironically, the same punishment they once forced upon Lyra. The crowd watched silently. No cheers. No celebration. Only justice. Final. Undeniable. Yet one question remained. Who would rule Blackthorn now? Thousands waited for the answer. Neighboring alphas waited. The kingdom waited. Even Cale waited. Slowly the Alpha King stepped forward. Then something unexpected happened. He removed the royal crown. Gasps swept through the square. Cale held the crown carefully. Then turned toward Lyra. The throne belongs to the rightful bloodline. Shock erupted instantly. Because everyone understood what he meant. Lyra's royal heritage. The first kings. The lost descendants. The claim nobody could challenge anymore. Cale knelt once more. Holding the crown. Offering it freely. Not from obligation. From conviction. The square watched breathlessly. Lyra stared at the crown. At the throne. The kingdom. Years earlier she would have refused. Years earlier she would have walked away. But exile changed her. Suffering changed her. Responsibility changed her. She finally understood something important. Power itself wasn't dangerous. The wrong people holding power were dangerous. Slowly Lyra accepted the crown. The moment it touched her hands, the crowd erupted. Cheers thundered through the kingdom. Wolves cried openly. Warriors struck their chests. The sound rolled across Blackthorn like a storm. The Omega they discarded had become their queen. Yet destiny still held one final surprise. One final truth. One final revelation. As celebrations began, the elderly archivist approached once more. His expression was pale. Urgent. Your Majesty. Lyra turned. What is it? The old wolf looked toward Elias. Then toward the ancient prophecy records. There's something we missed. The crowd slowly quieted again. Because after everything, another secret felt impossible. Yet the archivist continued. The prophecy wasn't speaking about a royal heir. Confusion spread. Elias frowned. Cale stepped closer. Then what did it mean? The archivist opened the ancient text carefully. Then pointed toward a damaged section previously overlooked. Additional words hidden beneath centuries of wear. Words nobody noticed. Till now. The old wolf read them aloud. The royal heir shall stand beside her. He paused, then continued. For he carries her blood. Silence. Complete silence. Elias went still. Lyra felt her heartbeat stop. Cale looked stunned. The crowd couldn't even breathe. The archivist swallowed. Then revealed the final truth. Years ago, during the assassination attempt, another secret was hidden. Elias wasn't merely a royal heir. He wasn't merely connected to the prophecy. He carried Moonshade blood. The same bloodline as Lyra. Descendants separated generations earlier. 2 surviving branches of the first kings. One hidden among Omegas. One hidden among Alpha rulers. The prophecy wasn't about followers. It was about reunion. The lost bloodlines finally finding each other again. Tears filled Elias's eyes. Lyra's vision blurred. Suddenly everything made sense. Why the connection felt different. Why ancient wolves reacted strangely to him. Why destiny kept placing them together. They weren't strangers. They were family. Long-lost family. The final descendants of a forgotten dynasty. And perhaps the most beautiful truth of all. The 3 cubs never followed Lyra because she became powerful. They followed her because years earlier she saved them when nobody else could. Their loyalty wasn't created by crowns, or titles, or blood. It was created by love, by sacrifice, by kindness. The kingdom's future chose her long before she became queen. Long before anyone discovered royal blood. Long before destiny revealed its secrets. They chose her because she was Lyra. And in the end, that mattered more than any throne. The moon rose above Blackthorn Kingdom for the first time in many years without fear hanging over its people. The corrupt were gone. The lies were gone. The truth finally stood where deception once ruled. Queen Lyra Moonshade stood upon the palace balcony overlooking a united kingdom. Beside her stood Rowan, Darius, and Elias. Not as missing cubs. Not as heirs. Family. Below them, wolves celebrated a new beginning. A kingdom rebuilt on justice instead of fear. Cale watched from a distance. He never asked for forgiveness again. Some wounds required time. Some mistakes could never be erased. But every day he worked to become the king he should have been from the start. And for now that was enough. As silver moonlight covered the kingdom, Lyra looked toward the horizon and smiled. Years ago she left these walls broken, betrayed, and alone. Now she stood above them stronger than anyone imagined. The Omega they exiled had returned as a queen. The future they tried to destroy had become their salvation. And the kingdom that once abandoned her would forever remember a simple truth. Never underestimate the one who chooses kindness when the world gives them every reason to become cruel.